Hey grade 8s, welcome to your Wednesday math. I hope you guys have somewhat enjoyed this nice weather that we've been having. It's also crazy to think that at the beginning of May we had snow and now we have a heat warning. It doesn't make any sense at all, but here we are. So today we're going to do our review as usual, and then we're going into something called theoretical and experimental probability. I've mentioned these before in past lessons. Today we're actually just putting it to practice. So far we've been dealing with theoretical probability, as in you are given these Scrabble tiles and we need to figure out what is the likelihood of pulling the letter L. So looking at the letter L, how many L's do I have? I have 1 out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I have one chance out of 8 tries to pull out the letter L from a bag. What are the chances that I pull out a letter that is from the word love? Well, let's check to see what letters I have. I have L, I have O, I have a V, and I have an E. So I have all the letters for love. There's 4 letters. There's only one of each of those letters. So therefore I have 4 out of 8, because I have 8 tiles altogether, chances to get a letter from the word love. Or if I reduce this, I know that 4 is half of 8, so I have 1 out of 2 chances. So that way I only have to try 2 times, and one of those should be from the word love. What about the word cat? So I have 1 for C, 1 for A, and 1 T. So that's 3 letters. I don't have any duplicates. So I have 3 out of 8 chances of getting a letter from the word cat. As if I try 8 times, 3 of those should be from the word cat. Okay? Today what we're going to be talking about is theoretical versus experimental probability. What this means is theoretical is what we've been doing so far. So I'll give you an example. Let's say I was to flip a coin 10 times. What are my different options? I can either land on heads or tails. So I can either land on heads or tails if I flip a coin. If I flip a coin 10 times, how many of those times will be heads and how many of those times will be tails? It should be 5 out of 10 times should be heads, because half of them should be heads and then half of them should be tails. So if someone was to ask me, oh, if you were to flip a coin 10 times, how many times would it land on heads? Well, it should land 5 out of 10 times on heads, because I only have 2 options for flipping a coin, not counting landing on its side, which is like a 1 in a million shot. Experimental is when you actually do that. So theoretical is like, oh, it should land 5 out of 10 times on heads. Experimental is when you actually do that experiment. So I'm going to flip a coin 10 times. The first time, I'm just going to use H for heads and T for tails. The first time, it lands on heads. Next time, lands on tails. Next time, it lands on heads. Next time, it lands on heads. Next time, it lands on tails. Next time, it lands on heads. Next time, it lands on heads. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Next time, it lands on heads. Next time, it lands on tails. And the next time, it lands on tails. So let's say I flipped a coin 10 times and these are my results. How many times did it land on heads? Let's count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It landed 6 times out of 10 flips on heads. Tails, it landed 1, 2, 3, 4. It landed 4 out of 10 times on tails. So you see how theoretical and experimental can sometimes be different. Maybe the next time I try flipping a coin 10 times, maybe it'll be 5 and 5 for each heads and tails. But this time around, it ended up being 6 and 4. So theoretical is, oh, it should land 1 out of 4 times on this, or it should land 1 out of 2 times on this. Experimental is when you actually do it. So I spin a spinner 6 times, and let's say 3 out of those 6 times it should land on purple, but in actuality it only lands 2 out of those times on purple. So today what you're going to be doing is you're going to have a sheet that will say theoretical versus experimental, and you're going to do some very simple experiments of doing heads or tails. And you're going to try the experiment a bunch of times. If you have a coin at home, you can just flip it yourself. If not, if you actually go on Google and type in heads or tails, it'll actually do an electronic flip of the coin for you, which is actually kind of cool. So you just type into Google heads or tails, and it'll flip a coin for you, and then you have the option of flipping it again and again, and you can flip it how many times you want, and you're just going to record it. So what you're going to do is you're going to actually create a T-chart. It's going to say heads on one side and tails on the other, and you're going to flip a coin, and you're going to just do a tally. So I flip it once, it lands the first time on heads, flip it again, next time it lands on heads again, next time it lands on tails, heads, tails, 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 heads, and then and you're going to just do your regular tally chart, heads. Oh, it landed 5 and 5 this time. All right, so that's what you're going to have. It's going to basically be a chart, and you're going to do the experiment a bunch of different times, and you're also going to notice that the more times you do the experiment, so let's say I only flip them 10 times, and then the next time I flip them 20, next time I flip it 30 times. You're going to notice that as you flip it more and more, it should end up being 50-50, as in half of the results should be on heads, half the results should be on tails, the more you flip it over and over again. So that's what you're going to be doing today, is just very simple heads or tails. So either use a coin that you have at home, or you may just use Google and do heads or tails on Google. The choice is up to you. And I will see you guys on Wednesday. If you have any questions whatsoever, let me know. So remember, you should do your part of your chart is going to say experimental. So if I flip a coin 10 times, 5 out of those 10 times should be on heads, 5 out of 10 should be on tails. If I flip it 20 times, 10 should be on heads, 10 should be on tails. Then you actually do the experiment. So I do the experiment and then I look at it and say, oh my goodness, it was actually 11 times on heads and 9 times on tails, or some other number, whatever it ends up being. All right, so that's what you have for today. I will see you guys on Wednesday, and otherwise, I hope you guys have a fantastic rest of the week. I hope you've been having a good week so far, and I'll see you guys on Friday.